Hello everybody, and welcome into day one of Jaws week, where for the next several days, we're going to talk about all sorts of Jaws related things here on the channel in honor of the film's 50th anniversary. Jaws is my favorite movie of all time, so I want to do something a little bit special for it and honor its legacy. So sit back and relax as we take a look at the film that changed cinema forever. This is Jaws. This is going to be a little tricky for me because how does one review their favorite movie? There's so many great things about Jaws that I feel like I'll probably miss something. There's a reason this movie has been so celebrated for the past 50 years. It's just that fucking good. Everything from the score, the sound mixing, the pacing,
the cinematography, the editing techniques,
and of course, the incredible performances, all combined to make a masterpiece. Jaws was the first true summer blockbuster and went on to become the highest grossing movie of all time upon its release. Even to this day, 50 years later, its influence and impact on cinema and culture in general still holds pretty strong. I mean, just look at all the shit it spawned. We got books, we got video games, we got sequels, we got Jaws board games, we got a Jaws cutting board, Jaws playing cards, Jaws magnets, Jaws candy, Jaws popcorn buckets. Fuck it, we even have Jaws sex toys! Which I totally don't own. But the journey to reach its legendary status wasn't exactly the easiest. The film was based on a novel by Peter Benchley that was released in 1974. However, before the novel was even published, producers Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown read a rough manuscript of it and decided to purchase the film rights and soon began the process of turning it into a movie. They had no idea how, but some way they were going to turn this thing into a movie. During the process of putting the movie together, they decided to make some changes from the novel. A lot of the subplots were removed and characters were changed a bit because they wanted Jaws to be more of a straightforward adventure story. In the director's chair was a young up-and-coming director by the name of Steven Spielberg. After being brought on to direct, the casting process soon began, with Roy Scheider cast as Chief Martin Brody, Robert Shaw as Quint, and Richard Dreyfuss as Matt Hooper. Multiple giant mechanical sharks were built for the film, alongside some real-life shark footage shot by Ron and Valerie Taylor. For the fictional town of Amity Island, the filmmakers decided to shoot the film in Martha's Vineyard. It was chosen because of the look of the town, and also because they could be a few miles out to sea, with the sandy bottom being around 30 feet deep, which allowed them to utilize the mechanical sharks while also not being so close to land. Things seemed to be going well for the most part, with principal photography set to begin in May 1974. That's when the problems began. Jaws was plagued by numerous production problems. The script was still being worked on throughout production, there was some tension amongst the actors, not to mention that shooting extensively on the open ocean proved to be extremely difficult. The elements were always against them, with the main issue being that the mechanical shark almost never worked for them. You see, when they built the sharks, they only tested them in fresh water, as opposed to testing them in salt water and having to deal with the power of the open ocean. But you gotta remember that no movie like this had ever been made before. They were figuring this all out for the first time. Unfortunately for them, this caused the shooting schedule to go way over by at least 100 days, with the budget also going way up in the process. Given the issues with the shark, this actually in hindsight worked towards the movie's benefit, as it forced Spielberg to have to be more creative with his sequences, taking a bit of a Hitchcock-like approach to things. He would have to imply the shark's presence, as opposed to having to show it as often, mostly relying on the use of things such as the barrels, or utilizing the John Williams music to alert everyone of the shark's presence, so therefore when the shark does appear, it leaves a bigger impact. After a long production process, Jaws eventually made its way into theaters in June of 1975, where it was released to widespread critical acclaim and became a box office and cultural phenomenon. It became the highest grossing movie of all time and also launched the career of Steven Spielberg into superstardom. Now at this point in the video, I want to do a rundown on what happens in the movie and talk about why I think it works so well. So as the movie begins and the credits start to roll, the first thing that immediately stands out is John Williams' iconic score. Without that music, this movie wouldn't be nearly as memorable. It adds so much to every single scene and sets the mood for the rest of the movie. Sometimes it's used for suspense, other times it's used to add a triumphant feel to a scene. There's also some great portions where it's used to help enhance the quieter character moments. After the opening scene, we see a girl named Chrissy run off with some drunk guy to go skinny dipping in the ocean with her. The guy passes out drunk, which is both fortunate and unfortunate for him in several ways. It's unfortunate because that girl is pretty freaking hot, and he's missing out on seeing her naked. However, he's fortunate in that he doesn't have to swim in that icy cold North Atlantic water. I know it's summertime, but that water isn't super warm this time of year, especially at nighttime, which doesn't bode well for any guy if you're trying to hook up with a girl like that.
You mean shrinkage?
Yes! Significant shrinkage.
Did I mention I love the way this movie is shot? Look at the beautiful cinematography by Bill Butler. It makes the ocean very peaceful and welcoming, only for something very sinister to be lurking beneath the surface. Then that music starts to kick in, and then BOOM! The first attack happens. We don't actually see the shark attacking her, which actually works to the film's advantage. Not seeing it allows us to imagine what's going on and adds to the overall tension. After that opening scene, we're then introduced to the lead character of the movie, Chief Martin Brody, played magnificently by Roy Scheider. He's the everyman of the story. This is his first summer in the fictional setting of Amity Island, and he wants to make a good impression. We see that Brody is married with his wife Ellen, played by Lorraine Gary, and also has 2 kids. The older son is named Michael, while the other son has the greatest name of all time, Sean. After getting to briefly meet Brody and his kids, he gets a call at home about a missing girl. So he goes to investigate the beach where they find her severed arm. Also, shout out to Deputy Hendricks in the scene. His reaction helps to better sell the reveal of the severed arm. Hendricks is one of my favorite supporting characters in this movie. He doesn't have too much to do, but he adds some levity to the screen whenever he appears, both in this movie and in Jaws 2. After getting his report back from the medical examiner, where the cause of death is determined to be a shark attack, Brody gets to work trying to close the beaches. This is when we are introduced to who some would call the real villain of the movie, Mayor Larry Vaughn, played wonderfully by Murray Hamilton. I love this guy, and I find myself quoting Vaughn quite a bit. Plus, his anchor jacket he wears in this movie is just incredible. I want that jacket so fucking badly, and it pisses me off that Universal isn't selling Mayor Vaughn's jacket for Jaws' 50th. Why not? Those things would sell like crazy. In terms of Vaughn's role in the film, he is someone driven by the economic stability of Amity Island. Despite the very serious threat posed by the shark, he is very against the idea of Brody closing the beaches. In his words, Amity is a summer town, and they need summer dollars. If word of a shark got out, then they would have a panic on their hands on the 4th of July. Not only would people not want to swim there, but the town's economic future would be threatened. He's so concerned about this getting out that he even gets the medical examiner to change his report on Chrissy's death from a shark attack to a boating accident. He's fully willing to risk public safety for the sake of economic gain. Despite his apprehension, Brody does ultimately give in to peer pressure and decides to keep the beaches open against his better judgment. This, of course, ends up being a huge mistake, as it ultimately leads to the death of a young boy named Alex Kintner. This scene is expertly crafted, from the music, the editing, and of course this famous shot. Plus, what I like is how subtle this scene is. One of Brody's primary fears is of the water. Notice how while everybody else is running in to get their kids, he's shouting from the shore to get everyone out, but refuses to actually go in. It visually showcases the fear he has to ultimately overcome later on without having to spell it out so much for the audience. After the death of Alex Kintner, the town holds a meeting where they talk about what they're going to do in regards to the shark attacks, including closing the beaches for only 24 hours. That's where we are then introduced to arguably the best character in the movie, Captain Quint, played absolutely brilliantly by Robert Shaw. He offers them all a solution. Pay him $10,000 and he'll kill the shark for him, which they say they'll take under consideration. It's tough for me to choose a favorite character in Jaws. The 3 leads are just so captivating, but it's hard to argue against Quint. Robert Shaw is just so captivating every moment he's on screen that you just can't take your eyes off him. Speaking of the 3 leads, after the town hall meeting, we are introduced to the final member of the trio, Matt Hooper, played fantastically by Richard Dreyfuss. He's an expert from the Oceanographic Institute, brought in to help with the shark problem. Hooper starts to get to work immediately as he first calls out the medical examiner's bullshit report about Chrissy's death being a boating accident. He's also the first person to question the town fishermen who are celebrating after they catch and kill a shark that they think killed Alex. However, given that the bite radius of the shark doesn't match the wounds of Chrissy, Hooper remains skeptical and wants to make sure it's the right shark by performing an autopsy. But the mayor refuses to do so because, well, he's an idiot. He's so concerned about those summer dollars that he yet again wants to put more people at risk instead of simply just confirming it, even getting mad at Brody for simply suggesting they cut it open. However, before Brody can argue about it further, Mrs. Kintner shows up to confront him in a pretty powerful scene where she slaps him right across the face to let him know that her boy is dead. A child's death that he feels guilt over, knowing that he could have done something to prevent it. But he didn't. He failed, and he knows it. This is something that he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life. It's then followed up by one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It may not seem like much, but this is an important one. At the dinner table, after being confronted by Mrs. Kintner, Brody is so distraught over everything, he hasn't even touched his food. The guilt over Alex's death weighs heavily on him. It isn't until his son Sean comes in and cheers him up that he starts to feel a bit better. We go from one parent losing their kid to another cherishing their time spent with their own child. Apparently this scene was improvised too. There's so much sincerity to it. It feels like a genuinely real and touching moment between father and son. It is that reassurance Brody needed at his lowest moment to help pick himself back up again. Plus, John Williams' score is just so good in this scene. After the moment with his son, Hooper shows up and Brody decides that now is the time to do the autopsy on the shark that was caught when they learn that it isn't the one that actually killed Alex Kintner. Hooper then decides to take his boat out with Brody, where they discover the fishing boat of a man named Ben Garner, where we get probably the best jump scare in the movie. Originally, this wasn't how the scene played out, but Spielberg felt a little bit greedy, wanting at least one more scare in the movie, so he reshot the scene with his own money to where the head pops out like that. I'd say money well spent. After discovering Ben's boat with a tooth in it, we learn that it's a great white shark causing these problems. Brody and Hooper plead with Vaughn to close the beaches, but once again, Vaughn still doesn't listen. He's so damn negligent at this point that it becomes kind of comedic.
But those beaches will be open for this weekend.
Well, Vaughn did indeed get his wish about keeping those beaches open. Too bad it didn't end so well for him. In a big surprise to nobody, the shark does indeed show up and kill somebody.
Amity, as you know, means friendship.
It's also the first time we get a glimpse of the shark. I absolutely love this shot here. The shark silhouetted under the water as it drags this man under is just so haunting. Plus, for a PG movie, this is pretty violent. The incident also leaves Brody's son Michael in a state of shock, and it's in that moment where Brody looks out to sea knowing what he has to do. He has to go out there and overcome his fears and kill this thing to save the town, but he can't do it alone. In the final scene with Vaughn in the film, Brody gets him to sign the contract so that way he can hire Quint to kill the shark, which he ultimately does, leading to Hooper, Brody, and Quint going out after the shark. Now, the movie's been pretty incredible so far, but it really starts to reach next level when we finally get these three leads together, and we get to see them play off one another, and they form one of the best trios in movie history, with each of them bringing their own strengths and weaknesses that complement the other. Hooper's the most well-educated of the group and brings a lot of the equipment they need for their journey, including the scuba tank that ultimately leads to the shark's downfall. But he also has the problem of thinking he knows everything, something that Quint calls him out on. Quint, being the oldest of the trio, brings the most real-world experience of the group when hunting the sharks. However, his hatred for sharks, driven by his traumatic past, doesn't allow for him to think as rationally, and his frustrations lead to him acting a bit unhinged and making some major mistakes along the way. Then finally, when it comes to Chief Brody, while he may not be the expert of the group and has the least amount of knowledge about being on the ocean, he learns from the two of them and acts as a bit of a mediator between their methods of doing things. Utilizing his common sense, he is ultimately the one who finds the best solution for dealing with the shark. I just love watching these three characters play off each other. There's some tense moments, some funny moments, and you really get to see them grow as a unit as the movie progresses. After spending a bit of time on the boat together, the shark does finally show up, at which point Roy Scheider manages to improvise one of the greatest lines in movie history.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
It's such a great line, and does a good job of adding some levity to the scene. Plus, after he says it, John Williams' score really starts to kick into high gear, and it's absolutely awesome. I get super amped up every time I see it. It's at this point where the hunt for the shark begins, and we see the characters start to grow as a unit, particularly during the scene where they start sharing stories about their scars, and Quint gives his Indianapolis speech. This is actually Steven Spielberg's favorite scene in the movie, too. The acting in this scene is superb. The way Shaw delivers his monologue is chilling, and you finally get to understand why this character has such a hatred of sharks. He was a survivor of the USS Indianapolis, which sank all the way back in World War II after being hit by a torpedo from a Japanese submarine. Given how secretive their mission was, it took several days for help to arrive, and during that period they experienced countless attacks from sharks, the largest ever recorded in human history. The monologue by Quint does a pretty good job at bringing the three of them closer together, as afterwards we get another great moment where they all start singing "Show Me the Way to Go Home" together. Just three dudes living the moment together. You gotta love it. Too bad that asshole shark didn't think so and says fuck you to your sea shanties and starts attacking the boat. From here on out, the rest of the movie becomes a fight for survival as the three men realize they're in for more than they bargained for with this shark. Quint starts to go crazy and smashes the radio. Soon the boat starts taking on water. Then, in a desperate move, Hooper goes into the anti-shark cage with the poison spear to kill the shark. What follows is one of the most intense sequences of the movie, where Hooper is attacked by the shark underwater. Hooper manages to escape, but when Quint and Brody raise the cage, they presume he's dead. However, they don't have time to warn as the shark jumps out of the water and onto the stern of the boat. What follows is the most gruesome scene in this entire PG movie as Quint gets slowly devoured by the shark. Quint's death hits extra hard, knowing that he really did start to form a friendship with the other two, and ultimately he's killed by his biggest fear. It's like the ghosts of World War II are coming back to finally get him. A moment of silence for the legendary sea captain. With both Quint and Hooper out of commission, Brody is forced to overcome his fear of the water and face the sharks head-on. What follows is one of the most intense climactic sequences ever put to film, that was cleverly set up earlier on in the movie. Brody grabs one of Hooper's scuba tanks, which earlier on in the film, Hooper had mentioned that
You screw around with these tanks and they're gonna blow up.
So Brody throws it into the shark's mouth, taking Quint's rifle as he climbs to the top of the boat with only a few shots left, and it all comes down to this. Brody is out of options. That shark swimming towards him will kill him if he misses these shots. We have seen this thing terrorize this community for the entire movie and kill our favorite sea captain. It has to die. The suspense reaches its max levels as Brody opens fire and misses a few times, until the last shot finally hits.
Fire, you son of a...
Now that's how you take down your main villain.
The climax to this movie is as perfect as you can get. Brody completes his character arc by overcoming his fear of the water and rising up to become the hero he was meant to be. Then, as an added bonus, Hooper shows up and you can see the relief on Brody's face. Hooper asks about Quint, but learns he didn't make it. There's a moment of reflection between the two of them over their fallen friend, before the two of them paddle back to shore using some of the remaining barrels as we get this great final exchange of dialogue between the two of them, at which point the credits start to roll.
I used to hate the water.
I can't imagine why.
So that was Jaws, and in case you can't already tell, I love the hell out of this movie. Jaws is a movie that has captivated me ever since I was a small child. It just works on every level. It's kind of hard for me to summarize in a few words just how much this movie means to me. It's just so good and holds up incredibly well 50 years later. Yeah, sure, you could nitpick that the animatronic shark doesn't always look 100% real, but the truth is that I just don't care. Jaws changed movies forever. It helped to catapult the career of Steven Spielberg, who will go on to direct so many iconic movies. The score is phenomenal, the acting is phenomenal, the directing is phenomenal. It's intense, it's adventurous, it's heartfelt, and it's also very funny in certain sequences too. There's so many great little moments in this movie, like this bit of Quint and Hooper where Quint is chugging his beer and crushes it only for Hooper to drink this little tiny cup and crushes it afterwards in response. That always made me chuckle. Or how about the town of Amity? I just love the authentic feel to this place. Even the smallest of supporting characters somehow managed to leave an impact, like this guy.
A what?
Alright, important question of the day. Who says the word what better? This guy from Jaws or Mark Wahlberg from The Happening?
What? No.
Tough question, but the correct answer, as you know, is, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What? What?
Regardless of who the winner is, I love all their line deliveries. Look, I could go on for hours talking about how much I love Jaws. I mean, I've spent the whole entire video so far glazing the hell out of it already. Jaws is an absolute masterpiece and has so many great things going for it that me just sitting here talking about it, it can't do the movie justice. You just have to go out and watch it for yourself and experience the film in all of its glory. Well, that was a lot of fun. It's always great to talk about something you love, but now I want to know your thoughts. What do you think of Jaws? Is it one of your favorite movies of all time, or do you think it's an overrated film? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content, hit the bell for notifications, all that other fun stuff, and be sure to come back tomorrow as Jaws Week continues for day 2 as we take a look at Jaws 2. Just when you thought it was safe to go back out in the water, they made another movie. So, is it good? Is it bad? You'll just have to wait and see. But anyways, as always, take care now, bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out. Dun, 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 dun.